Hey, Revenue Radio. This is Mary Grothe. Today, I'm by myself, me and a plant wall and a neon sign. For those of you that are just listening in and not watching on video, that is my current surrounding. But those of you watching, you're like, yeah, I can see it. I already know. Today, I'm bringing you a topic, something that's trending on LinkedIn right now. I love watching what's trending in the world of revenue. I love the revenue community on LinkedIn. And I just saw an article that talked about the importance of product testing. And as a chief revenue officer, as a CRO, I feel like that's one of the most overlooked components when a CRO is tasked with figuring out why a company has plateaued. So for us specifically, we prefer to work with second stage scale companies, meaning they're through startup scale and they've hit a plateau. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5 million in revenue. What got them to that point is no longer working. And so, hey, let's bring in a CRO or let's task our existing CRO to figure out why this is happening. First thing, they go to sales. Okay, let's figure out, we must have a sales problem if we've plateaued. Maybe our salespeople have become comfortable. Maybe they're not hitting their number because the buyer shifted, or we need to provide more training or figure it out. They've lost motivation. So fun fact, back when I started this company almost 5 years ago, we started as sales BQ and we were sales trainers. And in fact, that is exactly how we were brought in, is because sales were down. And so we would get brought in and the first thing we were doing was training salespeople. And I realized so quickly, wait a second, we can train a salesperson, but then we're going to put them back into the ecosystem, which was probably the problem in the first place as to why sales were lacking. Sure, sales training is amazing. I love doing it, but you can't train up the skills of a salesperson and put them back in the seat in the same ecosystem with the same tech stack that may or may not be the problem, with the same target buyer that may or may not be the problem, with the same product or service that may or may not be a problem. You have to survey and understand the full ecosystem to know where the root cause is. If you just go to the sales team and think, oh, we got to address sales, that may not be the full problem and you're only addressing a symptom. So I saw this trending article and it was all about selling shoes. So new shoe wanted to launch and they said, great, before we raise capital or align a lot of capital to doing a product launch, let's prove the market actually wants it. And so they said, we need to sell 300 pairs of shoes at this price point within a certain amount of time. If we're successful at that, great. We have something the market wants. Well, are you selling 300 pairs of shoes in your business before you optimize the strategy? Or are you going all in without testing? That's a problem. Testing is so important, whether you have a product company or a service company, or maybe you have a combination of the two. If you can, in a controlled environment for a smaller budget, be able to verify that the market actually wants what you sell, doesn't that sound like a no-brainer? Yeah. Then why aren't companies doing it? Well, I think that as COVID really sped along industry trends, the way the buyers buy, I feel like it sped up a lot of behaviors that maybe were forecasted 5 to 10 years out, things like same day shipping. We've put in the hands of the consumer pretty much anything they want, when they want it, how they want it, at the price point they want it. And so many shifts happened in our community and in supply chain and in the way people do business. So COVID sped up a lot of behavior changes for buyers, but it also launched a lot of new innovation. And in any downturn, or as we learned in the pandemic, it causes really great entrepreneurs to get scrappy and get creative. And so much innovation can come out of those troubling times. And so we have also seen new products and services emerge in the market that potentially solve the problem better than your product or service does. So anytime you've hit that plateau and you're thinking, well, how do we get past this? Step number one is you have to start doing research. You've got to audit data, people, processes, get into competitive analysis, get into do that secret shopping, really understand how are your competitors going to market, but don't waste too much time trying to interpret data. Go to the source. Talk to your people who talk to your customers, whether it's salespeople or your service people or both. And then make sure that you're surveying primary market research, like survey the buyer, whether that's you're able to get a focus group put together on your own, or you need to hire a third party to assemble that so you can get the primary market research. I think that it's invaluable, because if you can figure out the way the buyer wants to buy, what they want to buy, and at what price point and why it's meaningful, if you can answer all of those, that's tremendous. But then the next step is actually proving it. That's why they call it proof of concept. Yeah, because you actually prove it. So one, you do all that research and you come up with a hypothesis, which is an educated guess, data-driven, founded, really good research points. But then you actually have to prove that you were right. And do you skip that step in your company? I think a lot of people skip that step in their company. They're like, well, we did all this research. This was what the market was telling us. Okay, great. But like the smartest person out there still makes mistakes. The only perfect plan is the one still sitting on the shelf. Nothing ever starts without a plan, but nothing ever goes to plan. So you have to follow this methodology. This is what we use. It's tried and true. Use it today. Audit research. Step number 1, build and test. Step number 2, then optimize. Step number 3, and scale. That's step number 4. And so when you look at audit research, I just rattled off a whole bunch of things you can do on the front end. But when we go into build and test, the testing component is critical. So how do you run a great test? Well, you have options. And sometimes your current environment and your limitations are going to dictate what your options are for testing. Sometimes you have better capital or budget, cash flow, you have better runway, you've got a good team, and you can really do some profound testing and run multiple campaigns. You can put together a longer timeline, but it's really important that you assess the variables that you have and determine what is the right test for what we're trying to accomplish. Let me give you an example. Sometimes it's one thing to just talk through in theory. Other times it's good to have an example. The example I know the best is our own. So I started this company, as I said, just about 5 years ago. And during that time when we launched, I found, before I even told anyone, I started a company. So talk about true testing. This was like beta. I found 3 brave CEOs willing to bring me on as a fractional VP of sales. I had this hunch that sales was hard for most people. And I thought, if I could solve that problem, I'm going to have a business forever. I love sales. Sales has been easy for me. I absolutely love the profession. I have so much respect for it. And I thought, okay, this is my hypothesis. So I had done enough research because I've been in the industry or had been in the industry for enough time at that point. I was like, I'm onto something. I've got a hunch, but I had to test it. Of course, I also didn't have anything except for myself. I didn't build anything. I just had me, and I had to build it while I was doing it. And so I found 3 brave CEOs, and they said, yeah, we'll hire you as a fractional VP of sales. They each paid me $3,000 a month. I'm making $9,000. I had no overhead. That was a third of the money I was making in a full-time sales career, but I didn't care. I was on my husband's health insurance. I'm like, this is enough money to cover my expenses. I'm fine. I'm going to give myself 3 months, hopefully, as in a testing period to figure this thing out and get it to where I can build the infrastructure, build out my processes, and build something that could be repeatable. And that's what I got excited about. That was my focal point, and that's where I put my head down and did the work. So for 3 months, it was a lot of work, so much trial and error, testing, figuring things out, and trying to build a service model that would scale. During that time, I was experimenting with products as well, because in the world of sales, you have technology. There's other components like a product you could sell, like a sales playbook, something that's tangible, not just your training. And so I was able to start ideating and developing what are the products, what are the services, how can I package this? But those 3 brave CEOs were unbelievable to actually pay for my time while I was building it and being able to trial, error, test, iterate, shift, pivot, all while working for them. So the good news is we got great results. Like, I love them. I'm so thankful for them. And we had really good results, but they had a heart for me as an entrepreneur. Like, they were an entrepreneur. They were all founding entrepreneurs, like founders of their companies. And so they knew, like, hey, we can give someone else a chance here. So find the people that are willing to be in your test environment. If you're looking at launching a new product or service, you already have good paying customers, pull together a client group, pull together a beta group, tell them what it is, talk about how the hypothesis, pull them together, put them in a testing environment, and see if it has legs. See if you can get proof of concept. See if you can get repeatable results. And make sure it's not just by your own metrics, but the clients actually agree with you that it's something that they would pay for. Gather the data, build the pitch around it, get your case study, testimonials, then you have something to go to market. So if you're fresh out of the gate and you haven't done any testing, my recommendation is to test small. Test small until you have repeatable, consistent results. It'll be the earliest semblance of product market fit that you can get. But you can't get product market fit until you can go through a full loop and cycle. Like for us, even though we had traction and proof of concept, that's not product market fit. Proof of concept we had after 90 days. So I built a company on it. We did $500,000 in our first year, but we didn't have confirmed product market fit until after our first year. I needed to have a full cycle of seeing how the work we did actually impacted the salespeople that and the teams and the companies that we went to work for. And that feedback loop was so critical because by tapping into what was working and what wasn't, what was producing results and what wasn't, I was able to then iterate and say, wait, we can't do it this way. We have to do it this way. Wait, this isn't working. Something is off in the model. Guys, this isn't scalable. We've got to figure out, we have to fine tune. We've got to dial it in. So it was constant iteration. During that time, focusing on that constant iteration, we had this unbelievable connection with our clients, and they knew how committed we were to ensuring that we were delivering a great product, because if our product was great, product or service, then they won and they made more revenue. So they were very incentivized to be on our team and on our side during the process. So however you can take this example, translate it for your current environment and figure out, how do we test something new? So I have seen companies shift their entire product or service model pretty rapidly to something new, and then it fails. Okay, try to avoid that. Try to test in small environments with a subgroup, so that you can have a bit of a safety net in case it doesn't work, or maybe it flops altogether and you just have to pull it out. Like, can I just tell you, we've had a couple of failed launches of our own as a company. One of them specifically in 2021, we launched a marketing agency inside of House of Revenue. It was called Revenue Studio. And we realized that it was already active inside of our company, because we would go on contract for a year for our clients, and we would handle branding, marketing, sales, customer success, revenue operations. We'd scale the company. We'd go to graduate them, and they'd say, well, wait, we're highly dependent on your marketing department. Can we just retain your marketing team? And we thought, well, why would we shy away from the revenue? Okay. So we said yes to, 8 or 9 companies. What's between those 8 or 9, we had $1 million line of business inside of our company that we spun off into its own brand. And with that, we're like, well, let's make it its own company. Let's grow it. We're going to add clients to it. So we started marketing a marketing agency, marketing onlys. But we went in with the same team and frame of reference of how we scale companies from a chief revenue officer standpoint. Guess what? The business that hires a marketing agency is not the same business that hires a strategic growth firm. They're not. It's not the same ICP. So our team was used to being up here, like way up high on the pedestal, because our strategies were so innovative. And what we were doing with our chief revenue officer offering was cutting through their plateau. It was refreshing their go-to-market, refreshing their brand. So we were feeling like we had that same value to the organization. But when we were getting hired out as a marketing agency only, we were being treated like employees, like production work. There was no value. We were being dictated to by executive teams of companies that didn't understand marketing, what they wanted for marketing. I mean, we had one group that told us the design they wanted for a trade show banner, and we're like, what? That would be the worst banner you could ever create. That's not how you market at a trade show, and they wouldn't listen to us. They wanted nothing to do with our opinions. And so we designed a banner that we didn't want our name on. We're like, this is what the client is demanding from us. We built the banner and delivered it. And guess what? The trade show wasn't as much of a success. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. And then we realized our hearts are in a very high success rate and being innovators and strategists. Our hearts are not in execution. Whereas at House of Revenue, there's a healthy blend between strategy and execution in what we do. When we spun off this marketing agency, just because we could do the work doesn't mean we should do the work. And so we ran that agency for maybe 3 or 4 months, and we just phased it out. It's not who we are. It's misaligned with our ICP, who we want to serve. It's misaligned with who we are as people, with our core values. Like, this is not working. And so we shut it down. So I share this example with you really from a position of humility. I'm such an overachiever. Like, my whole life, I've covered up anytime I made a mistake because I would be so fearful that anybody would ever find me out, like, oh, Mary actually is human. So I've done a great job. Like, I'm covering up a lot of the mistakes that I've made solely out of the fear that I was mortified that someone would think less of me. But I've adapted. I've grown a lot as a human being. So now I'm sitting in the seat now, like, let's allow me to share with you and reveal when things don't go right inside of a business. And this is why you do testing. What a beautiful opportunity for us to do that testing and to be able to close it down before we put all of our eggs in that basket or transitioned our entire business model or hired, unfortunately, we did hire a few people for it that we did have to eliminate those positions. And that part of it, I absolutely hated. But thankfully, it was just a few people. It wasn't like, hey, we're spinning up a 50-person agency and going to market and going for this massive scale, and we'll see if it works. Like, we tested it in a very small environment on a small budget. And thankfully, we were able then to phase it out when it didn't work. So how are you doing testing, and why is testing important? Well, we've also worked for a lot of companies, and a big learning here where they want results today. So they love our innovative strategies, but they have zero patience or tolerance for testing. They want our idea to be so good that it'll work the first time with 100% perfection. It's like, guys, what universe are we living in if we think that that is in actuality how it goes? So the reason why we follow that audit, research, build, test, optimize, and scale is because it's tried and true. This is a proven methodology that has been used by hundreds of companies. It's a methodology that's out in public domain. We didn't come up with it. One of our team members actually had read about it somewhere and brought it to us back in 2020, and we've adopted it since then. But my recommendation for you is that you stop underrating the importance of testing. Like, you need to realize that this is something that you need to put an emphasis and focus on, that you can do it at very small levels. It could be A/B testing. It could be testing in a controlled environment with a customer beta. It could be a lot of different things, but the value of testing is that you're able to prove that you have something that can gain traction. It's sustainable. You don't put all of your eggs in that basket, and you're much, much more protected on the strategy. So with that, good luck to you and your product and service testing. And until next time.